I'm Kevin Jacobsen of Gold Derby here with Austin Winsberg, the writer and producer behind Zoey's Extraordinary Christmas, a TV movie which continued the adventures of Zoey's Extraordinary Playlist. So I know that it was kind of a painful time in that period where you were waiting to see if you got the pickup for season three. Didn't end up happening, but then you get this opportunity through the Roku channel to make this movie. Can you maybe take us through that whirlwind of sort of how everything went down during those, I don't know, few months?
Can I get out the tissues first? Uh, yeah, it was. Well, there was a. Oh, I'm trying to think how politically diplomatic I should be. There was a change of regime at NBC, and our show had also bounced around the schedule a couple times. I think it started on season two. We started on a Tuesday night at 8 o'clock. We were there for 6 episodes, and then I think we were off the schedule for several weeks, and then they moved us back to Sunday nights without a lead-in. And the show did really well with the fans and across different platforms. But then, on the overnight numbers on NBC, I think they weren't as high as they wanted them to be. And so we initially heard news that it wasn't going to come back on NBC, but then we heard that it was probably going to come back on Peacock. And then just as we thought that was going to happen, they told us that was not going to happen. So yeah, that was a roller coaster and kind of a shock because we ended season two on this big cliffhanger and with the expectation that we were going to continue to move forward, and no one told us not to do that. And I'd put so much heart and soul and personal stuff and so much about my family in that show that it was just to me it was more than just a job or a show. It really felt like so much of what I wanted to say and be about. And but then the fans really rallied behind the show. There was a massive Save the Show campaign on Twitter, and Lionsgate, the studio behind the show, did amazing outreach to other streamers and networks and companies. And then Roku stepped in and said, yeah, we want to do a Christmas movie, and we wanted to come out December 1st. And, we had literally like 4 months from me telling them a 4-line pitch on what it could be till the movie coming out. So it was just an amazing, crazy, quick trajectory.
That truly wild. I mean, with something like this, you're on a new network, a new format, with this being a movie. But there could also be people who are checking this out for the first time who might not have even watched Zoe's the show before. So what was the balance there of having it kind of be a standalone Christmas movie, but also something that does offer some closure to the diehards?
Yeah. I mean, that was the exact assignment. The assignment was do a Christmas movie that could stand on its own and live as its own thing, but also continue where we left off with the cliffhanger, but also make it close-ended so that if this was the end, it could feel like a appropriate wrap-up, but also leave the door open a little bit in case we wanted to do more. So it had to check a lot of boxes. And then on top of that, I didn't want to treat it like 2 episodes of the show. I wanted to treat it like an actual movie. So I broke the movie with a traditional 3-act movie structure instead of our typical 6 acts per episode of what we did on the TV show, and really just tried to make a different, larger story for Zoey and for the family within that, but kind of adhere more to movie rules than TV structure rules. So it was a lot to kind of navigate very quickly.
Hmm. And I will also say, just in terms of the operation and the production, I think visually it looks very consistent with the show. But were there aspects that you had to, maybe in terms of budgets or notes from Roku or anything, did any of that sort of feel different compared to when you were making the show?
Roku was an incredibly supportive partner. They were just happy to continue to live in the Zoe universe, and they had a kind of if it's not broke, don't fix it mentality. So Colin Davis, who was really our main champion over there, just wanted it to be to feel like what we had already done, and wanted just to be able to do more. So I was really grateful to them. There was kind of no network pushback. We had a sizable budget. You always want a little bit more here and there, but we were able to accomplish just about everything that we wanted to do. I mean, we had 19 days to shoot it, which is not a lot for a movie. And we had, I think, somewhere between 12 and 14 musical numbers. So Mandy Moore, our incredible choreographer, producer on the show, we went a little bit nuts trying to choreograph 12 or 14 numbers in a very short amount of time. And then I think we only had a few days with the cast to rehearse them, and obviously getting all of the song rights and figuring out how those songs fit into the script and the narrative and the balance of Christmas songs with pop hits and all that. That was a lot to figure out very quickly.
Yeah. Well, I do want to dig into just the plot of the movie. I mean, it's mostly about Zoey having to really cope with this being her first Christmas, her first holiday season without her father, and which kind of does work as the standalone concept and as a continuation of the series. But then you also have, the other elements that are truly continuations of the show, like with Max now having the powers, and Maggie having this kind of bond with Deb and them wanting to go on their cruise together, and obviously feeling kind of uncertain about the idea of moving on from her husband. I'm just curious if you could speak to what we might have seen explored in a third season, maybe fleshed out more with the benefit of more hours that we saw here.
I mean, I think you've kind of nailed some of it. I definitely a large part of the season 3 plan was going to be exploring what it means now for Max to have the powers too, and what it's like for two people to be in a relationship and know exactly what the other person is thinking or singing at all times. That felt like a funny romantic comedy idea. How can you be in this sort of power dynamic, and how can a relationship exist when you know exactly what's going on with the other person at all times? So I think I had a lot of storylines and fun ideas that I wanted to play with and explore with that, and the Max and Zoey relationship in season 3. Definitely some of the stuff with Maggie going back out into the dating world and what that was going to be like. My mom has this friend Sandy that Deb, the Bernadette Peters character, is kind of based on. And after my dad passed away, Sandy was kind of my mom's partner in crime, as the two of them kind of Thelma and Louise / Sex in the City their way back out in the world. They were both two widows at the time who were looking to have a good time. So I was going to do a lot more within that world and probably find different kind of men and scenarios for Maggie, to kind of start to dip her toes into that water, but also to start to explore. I really wanted to explore Maggie and her work life, and not just her and men in season 3. What was the other one that you mentioned? Obviously stuff with David and Emily and the baby. There was going to be more different work dynamics. There was a whole bunch of stuff I wanted to do with Simon. We had just opened the door to Simon starting a new incubator at Spark Point for season 3 for more diverse voices. That was going to be a whole thread that we were going to carry through in season 3. So yeah, I mean, definitely some of those ideas we were able to hit upon on the movie, but obviously not in the way that we would have fleshed it out episode by episode in the series. And then this idea of Christmas and first Christmas without dad. My dad was born on Christmas Day, and Christmas was always complicated because it was his birthday / we're Jewish, but we celebrate on Christmas somewhat. And so I just remember that first holiday that he was gone being a very strange time, because it's a time of celebration and you want to kind of honor the past, but you need to look forward. And is it okay to celebrate, and what does that mean? So that just felt kind of like a ripe area for emotion and being able to dig into some of the family heart stuff that I think was one of the trademarks of the show.
Yeah. And it's the exact right storyline, I think, for a Zoey's Christmas episode that made a lot of sense. And I mean, by the end, we do have this development where Max loses his powers, and there is this sort of revelation that he gained these powers in the first place so he could really understand what's in her heart and how she's really feeling. Was that always going to be the intention with the direction of that storyline?
That definitely in my head. I mean, that might have changed after spending time in a writer's room and really talking it through. But I did feel like the main reason he got the power was so that they could find some sort of, there was a lot of talk in season 1 and season 2 about the lack of balance in their relationship, because she knew something that he didn't know. She had a power literally over him. And I just feel like relationships need to have some sort of balance, and there needs to be so I felt like he needed to go through all of that to experience what that was like in order to sort of be on a more level playing field with her, to let go of his resentment that she had this thing over him. for them to kind of eventually move on and be the couple that they could be. So I did feel like we needed him to go on that journey. And exactly how that would have played out in another season, I don't know, but definitely the spirit of that played out in the movie.
Definitely. I do also want to dive into some of the great musical sequences because it's always amazing to just watch the choreography on this show. You mentioned Mandy Moore, I think, does such a spectacular job of really just playing around with movement and space. And I do want to just sort of pinpoint the opening song, which is the one in the mall with Mo and singing "It's the Most Wonderful Time of the Year." I went back and watched it again when I knew that I was going to talk to you, and I noticed that it's all in one take, which is just wild when you think about all the moving parts.
That one nearly
just
killed
insane.
us.
Yeah, I was gonna say, can you talk about just how you possibly conceived of that number?
Well, we love doing oneers on Zoeys, and
Yes.
we do feel like, that was always part of my philosophy within the show and the movie, is not to cut it within an inch of its life, to not make it feel like a music video, to be able to see the performance and experience the performance the way that Zoe is kind of experiencing it. So what that kind of ended up evolving into with Mandy and I is this idea of a lot of the numbers being oneers and sort of being in and around it and feeling it. And not only was it a way to actually save time because it meant we didn't have to get it from 17 different angles just in our shooting schedule, but also it just for us felt like more like we're really seeing a real performance. And Mandy is amazing at the way that she knows how to choreograph the camera for dance. And so I felt like if we're doing a big Christmas movie and wanting to make it feel like, hey, we're not playing around, I wanted to start big. And we had this idea of an opening number at the mall, and then we started talking about, could we do it as a oneer? And then it was just a lot of logistical figuring out. Can we start on the first level? Our director, Richard Shepard, who directed the pilot, who's another amazing friend and collaborator, who's so great with this stuff, loved this idea of them coming down the escalator and seeing people behind them dancing on the escalator, getting the scope. If you watch that number, I think we had something like 400 or 500 people that day, and you can see them on all levels dancing around them. So seeing that, and then it was just sort of figuring out how can we keep it moving and visually exciting. So they start off on one floor, they go down the escalator, they get on that train, they get off the train, they go through that Santa's village that we built, they come to the gift wrap. So it was a lot of figuring out the different pieces. And then Mandy's amazing at figuring out how to put dancers around that so the screen is always filled and there's always something happening. But I think we did it about 7 or 8 takes, and then we're like, I think we got it, and that was it, and then we moved on. But it was that was a big one.
Yeah.
The biggest number we ever did, just in terms of scope and number of people.
Yeah, I mean that's the time to do it when you get a big movie and I think you probably hooked some people with just like the spectacular nature of that scene. But it was also fun to sort of bring back the kind of dueling song thing like we saw in season 2, where Max is like trying to get intimate with Zoe, and it's like the two songs bouncing back and forth. And here we get both Zoe and Max kind of hearing each other's heart songs, and it's just the two of us, and mixed with "We Need a Little Christmas," which is just, how do you even mix those two songs together when they don't really sound too much alike? Like, how did that come together?
Well, that was definitely one of those things that I was thinking we could explore in season 3, was the opportunity, now that they can both hear what the other person's singing, to have a lot of fun with mashups or dueling things or surprises within that. So that was going to be kind of a new thread that I was going to have in season 3. So I knew I wanted at least one number to do that. That a number initially started off as an ice skating rink number, and we just weren't able to do it in the time that we had and the time of year it was with the weather. But I liked the idea that on Max's side, there was something very sweet and intimate and romantic between them. And then on Zoe's side, it was the exact opposite and just big and blown up. And I don't remember exactly how we got to those two specific songs, but I do remember we always had that concept of like small and intimate versus gigantic. And I just wanted it to feel like a Christmas explosion was coming out of Zoe, that like the whole act 1, she's been bottling up her true wishes and her true desires and her true want to make it a great Christmas. And then it all just kind of comes out at once. And I just remember on the night, I mean, we did not have a ton of time to shoot that number, and we were on location, and I was really nervous that this was going to be the one number that we actually weren't going to be able to get in the time that we had to do it. But when everybody got on those stairs and did that synchronized movement on the stairs with the slapping and the clapping, I mean, if you watch it, our editor told me there's not a frame in that where any one of those dancers is off from each other. It's so synchronized, and it's like, it's just Mandy drilling them and everybody being so precise and then nailing it. And that's one of my favorite numbers in the whole show.
Absolutely. But I also am someone who loves the more tender moments that the show has and that this movie has. Obviously, the one with Mitch singing to Zoey in the black and white, have yourself a merry little Christmas. I think Peter Gallagher just brings so much depth to that part, and it's in black and white, and it's like evoking an old Christmas movie, and it's in the Christmas tree lot. Can you sort of talk about what that day was like to shoot that very special scene?
Now I get to reveal some more of our secrets. That number was initially supposed to be done on the street. If memory serves, we were going to have her see the snow in the living room the way it is now in the show. And then I think she was going to go outside to discover that it was snowing outside, and that she was going to walk outside, see her dad on the street, and this was going to be walking down the street in front of their house where it was snowing all around them. And then she was going to wake up the next morning and find out that it had actually snowed outside in San Francisco. And we found out the day before, we had one night to get it on that street, and we found out that there were like torrential downpour storms that night, and that there was going to be, this was like a day and a half before we were supposed to shoot this on a Wednesday or Thursday. We found this out on Monday, and they're like, there's no way we're going to be able to shoot there that night. And we were also having problems getting snow and creating snow. So Richard and I were very depressed, Richard, the director, and we went back to my room at like 10 o'clock that night, and we were drinking wine and just talking about what could we do? How can we salvage this? I didn't want it to just be like on the Spark Point set or in the house. We had a lot of musical numbers already in the house, and at Spark Point, we wanted it to feel special and different. We were going through looking at like music videos, just trying to think of like creative things we could do. And I just said, what if it was black and white? And it kind of was hearkening back to the old movies they used to watch, exactly like you said. And then we said, and what if they're going, and I think Richard said, what if they're going through a bunch of trees? And then literally in 2 days, our crew put this entire tree set together with all these blacks all around it, brought the snow in from outside to create the snow. Mandy re-choreographed the sequence in that set. And that was all like, necessity is the mother of invention. And I think that moment, that number became much more special than was originally written and intended, just kind of with us at the last second saying, what if?
Yeah. Well, I never would have guessed that this was like a replacement musical sequence.
Yes.
So, yeah. And to your credit, I think there is this nice sense of closure by the end of the film that I think a lot of fans were satisfied with, but obviously there's also maybe this itch for more. Are there more stories to tell from this world that if you did get the opportunity, you would actually like to explore?
Absolutely. I mean, I still feel really connected to the show and the people on the show, and the fact that the show got to be comedic and dramatic and musical and all of these things that I respond to, and I think the fans responded to. So I love the idea of doing Zoey's Extraordinary Vacation, Zoey's Extraordinary Proposal, Zoey's Extraordinary Wedding, Zoey's Extraordinary Baby. I think there's a lot of places that it could go, especially with more movies. Obviously, it becomes harder the longer it goes on and trying to get actors back and all of that piece of it. But just in terms of, it still feels, and I talked to Jane about it, and I talked to other actors from the show, and we still feel this kind of itch there and this feeling like it doesn't quite feel, it might be over, but for us, it still doesn't quite feel like it's over. And as satisfying it and as gratifying it was to do that Christmas movie, I think we were still in the like, go, get it done. And now that we've had a little bit of time to step back, I think we still, I don't know, we still have emotions and nostalgia and love for it, and would love to do more if that opportunity came.
Yeah. I think you should do it like Peanuts, where it's just like you keep doing different holidays.
That's a good one too.
It's always Extraordinary Thanksgiving.
Yeah, Halloween.
Halloween, that'd be amazing.
There's so many good, like scary, spooky, fun Halloween songs we could do. So it does feel like it could lend itself to any more of that. I think it's just, Roku's appetite, and the movie apparently did really well for them. So it seems like there's maybe a door open for more.
Wow. Well, fingers crossed, definitely. Thank you so much for joining me, Austin. This was great. For those of you watching, subscribe for more interviews and go to goldderby.com to make your Emmy predictions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.